I am so sorry, full re-recording was needed for this video. I apologize for the delay. Now we are back with Cardiac Cave. Everyone loves a good old sequel to an amazing, or at least very good, original property, a continuation of greatness, and an extension of amazing creative design like Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. There's something that we love about a continuation of a story that either naturally or sometimes very unnaturally continues a story from already amazing film, game, show, or just entry in a series in the first place. When we consume art, there first has to be something to entice us to watch said piece of media. Whether that is two characters whose relationship is just so well fleshed out that it gets you to relate to them, or it's the world building that fully encapsulates you into the world and gives you everything that you wanted to see in any type of fantasy or sci-fi setting that you're watching it in. Whatever elements drew you in the first place have to be in some way, shape, or form present in the sequel, or else what's the point of it being a continuation in the first place? But also, if Empire Strikes Back was just another story about Luke being reluctant to fight the Empire until people started dying around him, then he surpasses insurmountable odds to destroy a giant super weapon, then it would have been more disappointing than my upload schedule. So there's always this yin-yang balancing effect whenever sequels are made to find out what made the original great and what elements to take into the future of the series and keep consistent throughout the rest of the franchise, such as potentially the mood, the setting, and other things of that nature. But then you have to decide on what to improve, or at the very least scale up, that being potentially the scale of the story, power system, the elements that are involved in making fights or making conflict in the story just increasing in not only how powerful it is, but also how it relates to each character or kingdom or whatever system grid is ruling your world. And then based off of that, you have to decide what is going to stay unique to the original and what is going to be replicated in future entries to even hope to keep the magic alive. Even understanding all of this though, we still see time and time again bland and underwhelming sequels that just rehash the original idea over and over without adjustment or self-analyzing. This is because of what I'm going to call the sequel paradox. Cars 2, Terminator Genesis, and the Star Wars prequels all made considerably more money than their predecessors. And why is that, despite being inferior movies? It's because when making a sequel, you are dealing with a leftover developed hype from the original entry that propels an audience with expectations for the follow-up, which leads to a phenomenon where most of the time, unless it's a film whose premise completely never lent to the logical sequel anyway, sequels will oftentimes outsell the original IP regardless of quality. Beyond those pesky financials of it all, creatively, I want to look at 3 sequels and discuss what I think they do well and what they drop the ball on so we can see what creates these amazing continuations that we love. For this examination of what creates a good, bad, and for branding purposes, generational sequel, I don't think there's a better case study than to look at one of the most highly anticipated, greatly debated, and highly controversial entries in the history of the medium of gaming, The Last of Us Part 2. The original Last of Us game in 2013 wasn't a marvel of any traditional aspects of gaming design. Now, the levels, the action combat, the AI, the simple mechanics, they were all average to above average. But the amazing acting behind the voice actors, as well as some magnificently delivered lines and chemistry, especially between Ellie and Joel, were the catalyst of countless Game of the Year awards, community praise, and the jumping off point for a new hit series from one of the industry's giants. Then, before the sequel even came out, the leaks came out. Before the game even came out, it was declared an act of treason for anyone who had ever played or loved a Naughty Dog or even PlayStation Studios developed game. And this happened for multiple reasons. The game forces you to sit through the death of a fan-beloved character. It then shifts you to the perspective of the person who you were hunting down who killed Joel after 15 hours, and then forces you to play as them and go through their life and understand their qualms and problems for the next 8 to 10 hours. Then make some questionable leaps in judgment to even get the characters to feel and display the guilt of the death that the writers wanted the players to walk away with. Throw in some good old ludonarrative dissonance in there, and for at least for the people who played, you have the most controversial game since the Mass Effect 3 Rainbow Endings fiasco. Given that we already highlighted the importance of acknowledging what makes the original property great and selectively deciding what you can cut and what you can improve on, I think it's safe to say that The Last of Us 2 is charged with multiple accounts of just forgetting, foregoing, and changing up the formula of what got them their initial success in the first place. And I don't just mean in trying to kill Joel, by the way, not just that decision. The current president of Naughty Dog and former writer and main director of The Last of Us 1 is going on record as to saying that he blatantly wanted to anger players while they were playing, to evoke a reaction in them that would be as powerful to get them to connect with the characters in the game. This isn't a gaming sin or anything, by the way, either. Multiple games have done this in the past and have been praised for the same thing. I think it more so comes down to the framing in which The Last of Us 2 decides to try to execute this in. The Last of Us 2 attempts to take a beloved character and continuously tear down her emotional walls and barriers until she becomes unrecognizable to both NPCs and the player themselves. Then at the climax of her own quest for vengeance or some type of closure, the player is forced to get to understand the other side. Now, as mad as I was at Ellie's sad ass, you think I want to play as She-Hulk Hogan over here to try to understand her as I was about to fucking murder her? The answer is no. And the devs at Naughty Dog knew that. They knew that they couldn't and decided not to even try to attempt to recreate the magic between Joel and Ellie's adventure from the first game. They cut down the Uncharted-like set pieces and doubled down on the average combat mechanics and stealth for the grounded setting of this world. As the world progressed, zombies became less of the main antags in combat as opposed to traditional humans and factions to help personalize the killing spree Ellie has embarked on. And they tried to tell a story that they knew most players would not have the patience or emotional maturity to sit through. And it's a story which sounds great in a vacuum about the cycle of violence and how you progressively as the player and as the character have to increasingly justify doing evil actions and decisions in a more evil world. But when that plot is the follow-up to a story about a cross-country journey between a broken father and a rough around the edges teenage girl trying to figure their way around a new society which is broken to both of them, then you have to question whether that's a good follow-up in the same universe. And for that question, I'll leave that up to you all. On the other hand, our next convict is the sequel trilogy. Guilty of 4 charges of killing the Star Wars brand in cold blood, and currently on the stand for not even understanding the point of a sequel trilogy. The biggest sin of the sequel trilogy to me isn't even the lack of planning on Kathleen Kennedy's part. It has nothing to do with the circular storytelling decisions behind Finn and Poe throughout the entire trilogy, and it's not even the character assassination that you could argue happens on some of the legacy characters. It's the fact that in a sequel trilogy, in the last trilogy, in a saga of movies, the movies did nothing to distinguish and move the Star Wars universe further beyond the existing stories, plot lines, conflicts, and basic ass parallels that we've dealt in the Star Wars universe with for the past 60 years. Never is there a faction that develops in the 30 years after the Battle of Yavin that develops other Force users or has a new philosophy other than galactic domination good, galactic domination bad. The Force does not belong to the Skywalkers, bro. Like, trust me, I get it. It's the Skywalker saga, but given that it's the end of their story, a good story would set in stone some more elements for the story and universe to continue by creating new factions, introducing new arcs and stories. But no, that doesn't happen in this whole fucking trilogy. The lore that the characters discover is either things we see in the past or other Star Wars media from the same 35-year history, or it's information that later gets retreaded and retconned in subsequent films. The biggest flaw in the Disney sequel trilogy is that it does nothing to continue our understanding of the Force or to expand our understanding or want for exploration of the wider Star Wars universe beyond anyone with the last name of Skywalker and Palpatine. Yes, even though I know that main character world building and character development is important, especially when you are focused on, for the most part, a centralized family or group that does have similarities in either bloodline, last name, or core features, it still shouldn't come at the cost of the world building of several and dozens of races, planets, religions, themes, and cultures that have been established in the Star Wars universe for decades that could lead to so many different possibilities of storytelling, but that just get sidelined for the sake of rehashing the exact same rebellion story whose inspiration is now over 40 years old. I think most people honestly feel the same, which is why now a lot of Star Wars fatigue is setting in, because the setting hasn't changed. The focus hasn't changed. And the galaxy far, far away feels more like a story of Skywalker and friends for 70 years. This video is not as long as I thought it was. Lastly, in conjunction with the not too recent release of Spider-Man 2, sorry, it's been a while since I wrote this, I want to talk about yet another Spider-Man sequel that I think nails what a sequel aims to be. Yes, even though the story isn't finished. And that comes in the form of Across the Spider-Verse. When we talk about creating a sequel for a character, figure, or property as large as Spider-Man is, it comes with incredible and immense expectations. What set Spider-Verse apart in the first place was the fact that it partially embraced some of the absurdity and ridiculousness about the Spider-Man narrative and overall world and created a meta-narrative about it, which is fucking insane. Granted, some of the Spider-Verse comics have been doing this for years, but at least in the casual audience, this was the first time seeing a non-Peter Parker main character in a long time. And it had a backdrop of the greater Spider-Verse to contrast experiences, lifestyles, villains, and art styles. And Lord Miller and company quickly realized that and capitalized on it by further expanding both the scope of the multiverse by not just using it as a tool to expand the cast or to explore what it means to be a Spider-Man, but also zooming the scope in to explore what it means to be Miles, to be Gwen, to be Peter B, and what makes a good Spider-Man in general. As much as I'd love to talk about Spider-Verse here on the channel, I feel like it would partially be redundant to a review that I did on Spider-Verse on my Patreon. And for just $3 to $5 a month, is different tiers depending on what you guys want to see. You guys can see my entire thoughts on the Spider-Verse movie in particular for, I think it's over like 20 some or if not 30 some minutes. I was sitting there at my desk talking for a long time. It integrates the green screen partially as well too, so you're still getting some of that quality as well. In one of those tiers, I haven't quite figured it out yet, you can get access to some of the other thoughts that I have on shows and movies that I watch along through the year, as well as some reviews and just reactions to full movies with some of my hood rat friends. Shout out to Dreamer, shout out to Vader, and shout out to Skinny Bob, as well as Archie. Archie may join us one of these days as we just react to a bunch of bullshit, including Cars 2, Iron Man 3, and we're about to record Harry Potter in a few hours. So if you're generous enough and have the funds, of course, I would very much appreciate you guys heading over to the Patreon, as it will allow me to have more funds to dedicate towards making this a potential full-time reality for you guys to pump out more videos and more content. Even if you can't go to the Patreon, I truly appreciate everyone who's just watched this video. I had to re-record this entire video months later as I don't review footage directly after I record, which is pretty stupid. And this was my first time also using this setup in my apartment building, which is not in my actual apartment. It's in the study hall right across from my apartment. So it's pretty janky right now, but I appreciate you guys sticking through. I hope to improve and have some stability in terms of recording, as well as a consistent schedule to get videos out to you guys. Definitely will be more consistent on the Patreon, and definitely will be more consistent on the podcast that I am now a part of, in the Flow podcast. If you want more consistent anime opinions with some of my friends on that, you can go watch that. That will be down in the description, as well as the Patreon, as well as potentially another video. And I think that's all from me. I appreciate any and all ways that you guys consume this content. And if either of these videos satisfy to your liking or to your taste, watch them. Click on them now. And I will catch you guys later. That's enough from me. I'll see y'all later. Peace.